Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, why David Peralta and Alex Reyes are good signings, and why MLB decided to make a rule that nobody likes permanent. That's what's on taps. Make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you never want to miss a day, because we're not going to, you can simply subscribe in any of those places, preferably both of those places. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Samperio. I'm usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider, although today it is just me. Jeff was busy being a dad. He does those dad things. So I'm here. But Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent time covering the team. We currently cover the team, and we pretty much sat all over Dodger Stadium. So we're not here to bring you any inside sources most of the time, but we're here to bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And that's what we're here to get into today. Yesterday, we would have talked about a couple of the things we're going to get into today, David Peralta, Alex Reyes, but we had the second part of our interview with Keith Law talking about Dodgers prospects. If you missed those, there's two episodes. You can go back, check them out. Keith Law is always very high on the Dodgers and their prospects, and no change this year. He does have the Dodgers as their #1 farm system, and he has a lot of good things to say about a lot of the Dodgers prospects. So go check those out if you haven't already. And let's get into this news that we got from the Dodger world this past weekend. On Friday, the Dodgers, it was reported they agreed to a 1-year, $6.5 million deal with David Peralta. There's some incentives in his contract that could bump it up to, I believe, $8.5 million. It hasn't officially been announced by the Dodgers, but it has been reported by multiple people. So I would expect it to happen. And this is an interesting deal this late in the offseason. This late in the winter, this late in the offseason, just because of the fact that we kind of had a plan or thoughts of what the Dodgers were going to do in the outfield, or at least, vague plans and thoughts. It was really going to come down to what happened in spring training. And that's still a possibility. I don't think David Peralta comes in and is an automatic starter, but he is a guy that, you're signing him for $6.5 million. I would expect he's going to reasonably expect to get a fair share of the playing time out there in left field. And it does help the Dodgers in the sense of you're getting someone a little more known. We don't know what James Outman is going to give the Dodgers. We don't know what Trace Thompson is going to give the Dodgers. And we kind of don't know what Chris Taylor is going to give the Dodgers based on what he did last season. Whereas Peralta has been pretty much, not, obviously not the same guy as he's gotten older, but he's been a formidable, above average, pretty solid outfielder in the major leagues for quite a while. Obviously, we've seen him a lot with his time with the Diamondbacks. And yeah, pretty much he has a career 796 OPS, which is, pretty good. He's from 2018 to last season. He's had OPSs of 868, 804, 773, 728, and then 731 last year. So, yes, he's gone down a little bit, but he's still, for the most part, an above average outfielder. Other than 2021, he's been above average in OPS plus basically his entire career minus 1 year when he was hurt. So he's solid out there in left field. He brings you defense. He brings you hitting. He brings you, veteran presence, if you believe in that. And he brings you a little bit more stability. Last year, Peralta was with the Diamondbacks to start the year. Started off pretty strong, had about a dozen homers in 87 games, ended up getting traded to the Rays. He didn't hit any home runs there with the Rays in 47 games. His OPS was down to 652. So not as encouraging there, but as we know with the Dodgers are going to, one, put you in a position to succeed based on what you do best, and two, they could make some changes or they could find some things in your game that they believe they can help or fix out. So that's I would imagine that's what it is with Peralta. The other part is, even if Peralta doesn't end up being a starter, let's just say James Outman shines in the spring or Trace Thompson shines in the spring. Chris Taylor is back to, what we know for Chris Taylor. And then Peralta just becomes a bench option. That's, not a bad bench option to have. The one thing with Peralta that even if he is a starter, we're not going to see him on an everyday basis. We're going to see him against right-handed pitching. Right-handed pitching last season, he had a 778 OPS with 11 of his 12 home runs. And against left-handed pitching, only in 73 plate appearances, but he had a 462 OPS with just the one home run. Uh, Not good. So he doesn't hit left-handed pitching very well. He hasn't hit left-handed pitching very well throughout his career. He has a 663 OPS against lefties in his career with the 836 OPS against righties. So, at the very least, what are we going to see from Peralta? We're going to see him play in left field against right-handed pitching. That's the bare minimum of what we're going to see. Um, and yeah, that's not a bad deal to have. Like I said, especially not knowing what you're going to get, what you're going to give, or what you're going to get from guys like Outman and guys like Trace Thompson. And even if Taylor's back to normal, they might want Taylor to be more of the role that he's been used to of kind of filling in here and there. Or maybe they want Taylor to play center field and Peralta and, a combination in left field. Whatever the case is, it's a signing. It adds a ceiling. He's an everyday starter in left field or, the majority starter in left field facing right-handed pitching. The floor is he's a bench bat and can come in maybe late into games depending who's playing the outfield. And for the money they're paying him, which is not that much, the Dodgers are already over the luxury tax, so I'm not worried about that anymore. That's not a bad deal. $6.5 million instead of incentives to get him up to $8 million. There's no issue there. While he was annoying when he played the Dodgers with the Diamondbacks, I don't think that there was really any bad blood, at least not that I can remember between them. There might have been a couple times where things got heated or he was involved in some of those fights and things that the Dodgers got into with the Diamondbacks, but I don't think he was the main catalyst in any of them. And he's a guy that you hated him because he, played well against the Dodgers for the most part, at least from what I remember. But he was never anything. He's a solid major league outfielder, and the Dodgers could use solid major league talent, and that's all you can really ask for. So, yeah, I'm not upset with the Peralta deal. Uh, he fills the role. He strengthens the team 1 through 26, and that's all you can really ask for this late in the offseason, especially with all the unknowns that the Dodgers have, especially in the starting lineup. The other part is I th- I'm not going to say it for sure precludes anything from happening, but this late into it and without any rumors or links or anything, I don't think that one big deal or that one trade that we maybe not expecting, but maybe thought could happen. I don't see that happening now. I would imagine that this is the team the Dodgers are going to go into the spring with, maybe add a couple more minor league additions with invites to spring training. But pitchers and catchers reporting, position players reporting soon, and this is the Dodgers team we're gonna have, so it's not the worst Dodger team to have, and Peralta makes them better. So that's it on David Peralta. Overall, solid signing. I'm in favor of it, and hopefully he can help the team out. Dodgers made another signing who's going to have a little bit different impact on the team, specifically in the bullpen with Alex Reyes. We'll get into that. But first, let's talk about Built Bar because today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through Super Bowl. We just got through, maybe you're still clinging on to your New Year's resolutions, but you need some help. Built Bars can help because they taste great, but they're also good for you. You got to try Built. Perfect for anything you can think of. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to put on weight, it's got the high protein, high fiber, low carbs, low calorie. All the bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, so they taste very good and they have a bunch of great flavors: peanut butter brownie, churro, coconut almond. I've tried a lot of the flavors, and there's really not any that you can go wrong with. It just depends on your preference. And yeah, 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, basically what every bar has. you don't want to miss out on it. And now you don't have to wait. You don't have to put in an order and wait for it to come. You can just go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, head to the pharmacy section and get your own Built Bars. They got 4-bar boxes. They got 13-bar boxes. They got all the other flavors I mentioned earlier. They got cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, a bunch of different things for whatever your palate desires. So if you're close to Slams or if you're close to Walmart, go get a box and you can thank us later. Go check out Built Bar. All right, let's move on to the other signing the Dodgers made. I guess real quick, the Dodgers did add a former Dodger to the mix it's a minor league deal. I don't even know if there was an invite to spring training, but they signed Robbie De La Rosa. Robbie De La Rosa was added to the roster. If you don't remember Robbie De La Rosa, he got comparisons to the next Pedro Martinez back in the day, probably a little unfair. He did come up with the Dodgers, make his debut with the Dodgers, and then he was in that trade that brought Nick Punto and Josh Beckett and Adrian Gonzalez and Carl Crawford. He was in that trade. He pitched for the Red Sox. He pitched, I believe, for another team. He's been in Japan the last few years, but now back with the Dodgers. So he's only 33 years old, which is interesting because that trade was back in 2012, which is, a long time ago. And you're like, oh man, he's you think similar to Jason Hayward. We're like, oh yeah, he's probably like, mid to late 30s, but no, 33 years old. I don't know what's left in that arm. I would imagine it's more depth than anything or just taking a flyer, but a fun name to look back on. The other name the Dodgers signed this offseason, or not this offseason, this past weekend, is Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes signed a 1-year, $1.1 million deal with the Dodgers. Incentives can take it up to 10 million, I believe, and there's a club option for 2024 that's worth 3 million. The 10 million that he can get up to is based on the next 2 seasons. So high risk or low risk, high reward. Alex Reyes was an all-star as recently as 2021 with the Cardinals. If you remember Alex Reyes for another reason, he was the one that gave up the home run to Chris Taylor, the walk-off home run in the wild card game in 2021. But if you prefer to remember him for not just that moment, he's been a pretty solid reliever the last two. Well, in 2020 and 2021, he did not pitch in 2022. He was coming off he had shoulder surgery last season. So in 2020, he had a 3.20 ERA with a 27 strikeouts and 19.2 innings. In 2021, he had a 3.24 ERA in 69 games, 95 strikeouts in 72 innings, 29 saves. Now, he is still recovering from that surgery. He likely is going to miss the first few months of the season. So Juan Toribio, who reported the deal, he said, as he recovers, the right-hander is expected to miss at least a couple of months in 2023, but the Dodgers are hopeful he'll be a big piece of their bullpen toward the end of the season. It says that Los Angeles, along with the Blue Jays and Marlins, watched Reyes throw over the past few weeks, and the medical reports all checked out. Now, this is something that the Dodgers have, I don't know if they're known for it, but it's something that they've done in the past, which is sign a reliever who's hurt, who might not pitch or might not contribute that heavily to them that season, but they sign them essentially to a 2-year deal, one of those being an option, and they go and try to figure it out. They did it with Tommy Kahnle when he recovered from Tommy John surgery. They just traded for JP Fireeyes in this offseason, knowing he's not going to pitch in 2023. They kind of did it with Blake Trinan, and he's not going to pitch this year, but they have him already on tap for next year with a $1 million option. And then it hasn't always worked out. The Dodgers did trade for Danny Duffy, and then they also tried to sign him, and they also signed him to a 1-year deal. And he never pitched for them at all. And now Danny Duffy's off with the Rangers. But Reyes, it's like I said, low risk, high reward. $1.1 million. That's not that much more than paying somebody that's a rookie with the Dodgers. It's really not that much money at all. And Alex Reyes is a guy who's been very good. Like I mentioned, that strikeout rate was very solid. He was very solid for the Cardinals. And he's only 28 years old. It's not like he's, a washed up reliever. Now, relievers are very volatile, and it's very possible that he's past his prime. And with this surgery, he's had multiple injuries in the past. Shoulder surgeries are hard to recover from, or not the easiest to recover from. So there's still a lot of things that need to go right. But if they do go right, and as what we've seen with the Dodgers, for the most part, if they get guys back, most of the time they're back pretty well. And not only are they back pretty well, but they're back in the Dodger system, which means they're going to utilize, similar to the offense side, they're going to focus on what you do best, and they're going to let you do that, and they're going to try to improve you around the margins, or improve mechanics, or improve whatever. And you know, no complaints here for this deal, because it's Dodgers bullpen's already solid. The Dodgers, for the most part, it's hard to tell because we don't always know what you're going to get out of relievers. Like I mentioned, they're a little bit volatile. But what we do know is that what they do have is expected to be pretty good. And adding a guy who's going to come on late into the season, either to help one with giving guys a little bit of a breather, or two, solidifying himself before the postseason. And, three, it's essentially, if he comes back strong, it's essentially like making a deal at the deadline for a top reliever without having to give up any prospects. So it's smart for the Dodgers. It's interesting, even with the fact that he might not pitch half the season, or maybe more, depending how his recovery continues to go. He's still a guy that a lot of teams could have used, and the Dodgers, I don't know what it is about other teams not kind of doing similar deals to this, where they basically sign a reliever for 2 years, knowing that he might not contribute too much in year one. Well, I don't, it's not like the Dodgers are paying him a lot of money. Maybe teams just don't want to put in money you know, into players, or into players that aren't going to play for them. But signing him now means that he's going to be with the Dodgers staff the entire season. They're going to be under his eye, under the trainer's eye, under with the best doctors and everything else. So I don't mind it. It's not a bad deal at all. And Alex Reyes is good. He's a guy who's mainly fastball, slider, sinker. He does throw a changeup and a curveball occasionally. But in 2021, he was 30% of the time four seam fastball, 28% of the time slider, 23.8% of the time sinker. So those three pitches, I would imagine the Dodgers are going to focus on the one that's do best. So his four seam fastball and sinker are very similar in terms of getting guys out, expected batting average against them, both in the 200s, actual batting average against them, both in the 200s. Swing and miss percentage, very similar, between 16 and 23%. The slider is his pitch. So the slider is his pitch. He has a batting in 2021, he had a batting average of 089 against it. He had a 55% whiff rate and a 43% put away percentage. So that slider is the move. And now it's a matter of, the slider has to play off the four seam or the sinker. I don't think you can just be out there throwing sliders. But you look at 2021, you look at Alex Reyes, and you look at his baseball savant page, and there's a lot of red there. Expected batting average, expected slugging, barrel percentage, whiff percentage, strikeout percentage, average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, the spin on his pitches, all in the red. Some of those in the 90th to 95 percentile. The guy's good if he can be healthy. And if he is healthy, the Dodgers are going to benefit from it. So another solid signing for the Dodgers. Even if it doesn't work out, they're only on the hook for $1.1 million, which is nothing to the Dodgers. So salute to Andrew Friedman. Another one that could potentially be fun to beat, or fun to wait around for. So Alex Reyes, we hope to see you in the later part of the season. Final thing we're going to get into, MLB made some adjustments to rules and made one rule permanent that maybe us Dodger fans don't love. That's what we're going to get into next. But first, let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook, because FanDuel Sportsbook is the sponsor of this show. And it's basketball season, the midpoint of the NBA season. The All-Star games this weekend. It's a perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores and threes drained. You can put together a same game parlay where you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout. You can bet on player props like points, rebounds, assists. You can put spread, money line, total on the actual game. And there's also some exclusive bets like 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. So go check it out. Go find some stuff to bet on it with FanDuel. Don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, let's finish up with some rules adjustments. The first one that us Dodger fans aren't going to love is the probably wrongly named, but the ghost runner rule, the extra inning rule where they put a runner on second base to start the inning. That's going to be permanent from now on, moving forward in the regular season. So, in regular season, once it gets extra innings, we're going to have the runner on second base and to start the inning. And while the Dodgers, for the most part, we know that the Dodgers aren't very good at this type of baseball. Even though they did end up winning a couple extra inning games toward the end of last season to make their record a little bit better, they weren't, for whatever reason, they weren't good at it. And they weren't good at it in 2021 and they weren't good at it in 2020. But it's, the rule isn't the worst thing in the world. Obviously, it's not ideal. It's not in terms of like straight up baseball, it's not fun because you don't get that element of you earned a game to win. You earned a run to win the game. You have the runner on second. You can ground out and fly out and score a run. And then you can have a reliever who comes in, gets a ground out and a fly out and a strikeout, and still gives up a run and still could earn the loss. Now, in terms of what the rule is for, in terms of saving arms and not allowing games to be extended too much, that does work. In 2019, before we had these rule changes, there was 37 games that went 13 innings or longer and 8 games that went 15 innings or longer. Last year, there was only 11 games that went 13 innings or longer, and none of them went over 15 innings. And this is where I'm conflicted a little bit because the long extra inning games are fun sometimes, but only if you win. Staying up till 11, 12 o'clock if you're on the West Coast and seeing the Dodgers, nobody scores, nobody scores, nobody scores, nobody scores. Somebody scores and then you win, or somebody scores and you lose. I'm still kind of a fan of that in the sense of I don't know if it's a fan because I don't know. I like them, but I'm also a fan of being efficient, especially now with us doing the podcast after every game and things of that nature. If the game ends by 10:30 the latest because they only went 1 or 2 extra innings, and I can be recording the podcast before 11, then I'm not upset at it. But I don't know. Whatever the case is, I know a lot of baseball purists don't love it. It makes sense in the way that, yeah, you do prevent some of these extra long games that happen in like August or September where you're like, oh man, like this game's gonna go forever. It goes kind of hand in hand in the sense of with the it used to be the 40-man call-ups in September, and in those days, I mean, you have like 10 arms to throw an inning at least. So you could go a while before you get into like having a position player pitch or having, like the starter for the next day pitch or whatever the case is. And overall it makes for a better product if you have fresher bullpen arms every day, blah blah blah. In theory, you're whatever the case is. I don't have a strong opinion against it, but I also wouldn't have minded if they just went back to the way it was. But whatever. I don't have a strong opinion too much on that, other than I would have liked to it go back the old way, but I don't hate the new way. I'm just not a fan of it too much. The other thing that the so what this was, it was the MLB Joint Competition Committee. They're the ones that did these rule changes or these rule updates. The other one that they had is maybe the Hanser Alberto rule. They limited the use of position players as pitchers, and it can only happen in a few ways now. It Position players can only pitch one in extra innings. So anytime a game goes to extra innings, a position player can pitch. Two, if the winning team is up by 10 or more runs and only in the ninth inning. So if the Dodgers were winning 10-0, they could have a position player pitch in the ninth inning. And the other part is if a team is losing by 8 or more runs at any point of the game, then they can have position players pitch. Now, the old rule, which we learned and affirmed last year, was 6 runs either way. Up by 6, down by 6, you could use a position player. As you may remember, the Dodgers tried to use a position player when they were down by 5, and then umpires talked it out and ended up reversing it and figuring it out, whatever the case is, and they weren't able to use a position player. This is 10 or more runs and only in the ninth inning is kind of aggressive because for the most part we've seen a lot of position players, and I guess it depends on how you feel about position players pitching. It's a novelty for sure. It used to be more of a novelty, like, oh hey, so and so is pitching, or oh hey, whatever the case is. But I guess the point of novelty has kind of become more. I don't want to say a phenomenon, but it's become way more use or used way more than it was in the past. I mean, last year we saw Albert Pujols pitch. We've seen Justin Turner pitch in the past. We've saw Brett Phillips. There's little moments here and there like that, like, oh, Brett Phillips pitching and making a sliding play, or Albert Pujols pitching in his last year ever, or for Dodger fans, like, oh, Hanser Alberto's in again, or oh, Justin Turner's pitching. And that novelty can still happen, and it will be more of a novelty because being up by 10 runs, it's not very common to be leading by 10 runs or more. For any given team, I would imagine no more than 5 to 10 games a year, you're going to be up by 10 heading into the ninth inning. So we're not going to see it too often. And for the most part, that's when we saw it for the Dodgers, when the Dodgers were up big enough over the 6 runs. Down by 8 runs at any time is also interesting because, you can concede a game a lot earlier. I don't expect teams to use position players in like the 5th inning. But if you're down 8-0 in the 5th inning and you got a stretch of like 10 games coming up with no days off, yeah, you might be more willing to use a position player. And now you're going to see a position player throw 4 or 5 innings, which, isn't ideal either. But I think it's weird in the fact of MLB telling teams how to handle their staff. If had just made, okay, only pitchers can pitch unless the game goes to extra innings. Like, that's, for me, that's a little bit more formidable of a rule. It's like, okay, unless you're a designated two-way player like Shohei Ohtani, you can only pitch if the game goes to extra innings. That way you have to use your arms up until the ninth inning. And then if it gets, into a weird game, or you want to save your arm, or you don't mind conceding a loss, because basically if you put a position player, it might be conceding a loss, then that's the case. But to have like, oh, you have to be up by 10 and only in the ninth inning, or if you're down by 8, you can use it. It's not as strong, and it's a little bit like, well, if you're gonna put those type of restrictions, then just let teams do whatever they want. But you're trying to save the product on the field. Yes, is it fun to see these position players pitch sometime? Yeah, but also you're not seeing guys that are, it's like seeing Shaq do the 3-point contest. Would it be fun? Yeah. But would he do well? No. And would we be only interested in it because if he does do well, we're surprised? Pretty much. That's basically what it is with position players pitching. So I don't know. Like I said, I think if they go, I think they could have went stronger where no position player, unless it's maybe not until the ninth inning or extra innings only. This way, it seems like a little bit like, all right. Well, if you're losing, see, like now, if you're losing, that means you're not doing that well. Your team might not be that good unless it's just off night. And now you're rewarding bad teams. I don't know. Whatever the case, I don't feel strong about it. I like while I do like the novelty of position players pitching, I do like, forcing teams to use their depth, using their roster, using all their levers, using, their whole 40-man roster if they need to, because the Dodgers benefit in that way. So that's what helps them out. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. That's going to do it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. He's a prospect encyclopedia. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. We are also free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube if you search for Locked On Dodgers, which is how you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, search My Device Play Podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.